Crank that up. It really does get you going. Everybody, welcome to Aggressively Healthy. I'm Dr. Marko Lujic.
I'm Mike Ranfone.
And this is the Aggressively Healthy podcast powered by
RTS Health.
So we're doing a little intro thing, and truly none of this information should be used specifically to anybody listening as medical implementation. It is purely medical that could be thought about, discussed with your practitioners, or discussed with us.
Honestly, if the best thing that we can produce is you asking better questions, this has been a success.
Success. And our entire drive, as Mike and I have said the entire time, we want to educate everybody about your health, not ours. Our health is what we do with it. We want you to feel empowered to kind of explore the options we're going to offer. One of the big things in recent headlines is longevity and kind of what we discuss on a daily basis: age management, hormone replacement, exercise, nutrition. In a headline recently that caught our attention, we always ask, are we over-indexing the value of VO2 max for longevity? And it's interesting because the entire VO2 max world was kind of pushed out into a forefront with the guy from California. I don't really know where he lives right now, Dr. Peter Attia. I have no opinion on him, whatever, but that kind of became the forefront leading example of what we could use VO2. Thoughts on this topic, Mike?
Well, it's funny to me because, the VO2 max and its notoriety or prevalence in especially social media with the longevity gurus makes me beg the question is like, well, what the hell is longevity medicine? And is it just a pipe dream? Or is it just a label that people can slap on so they buy their shit? You know what I mean? Because VO2 max actually has, which we'll discuss, a lot of merit and warrants at least the understanding of what it does and what it doesn't do.
Yes.
But this also opens the door for someone that has a very powerful platform talking about longevity, selling this. I don't want to make it sound like they're charlatans, but the same guy who's going to convince you should do a VO2 max, is he selling you a sauna, a salt drink?
Yep.
Now we're talking a little bit more snake oil, in my opinion. But I think it starts with the idea of do we agree with the term that longevity medicine is a legitimate field to practice within?
And interestingly, when this all started, VO2 max was presented as a consumer like me of new information in metabolic world. VO2 max was like the ultimate.
Yeah.
And I bought into it early because it is an exercise tolerance test.
For what it is, it's fantastic.
It's fantastic. And then the more we get into this style of medicine, as you said, these longevity gurus always want you to talk about VO2 max, this thing you want to hunt for while buying or using all these other things. The research really is way more complicated than the headlines suggest. And when you actually pull the study apart and kind of say what people think they say, and the picture looks very different versus what they want you to understand. And here's where it became obvious to me, and this is where I think this discussion will head through the course of this episode. A VO2 max is like anything else on this planet, right? Just like we say, muscle mass is the key to longevity. So then we get the people that text us and say what? Oh, well, if you build too much muscle mass, it can revert. Well, no shit. Yes, we understand that. So I'm now going to put that in context of the VO2. There is a point of no return with VO2. There's going to be a point where your VO2 training to get you a better VO2 could actually be detrimental to your cardiac muscle size, your muscle endurance, your fat, your body comp, all of these things. So it comes back to the point that it's all of the things again. So when we really dive into the literature and interpret what they want us to know versus what the people think they might be saying, what is our biggest drive here? Because it's hard for some listeners, I think, to appreciate everything we talk about in terms of resistance training versus pure cardio. This test is like a quote-unquote pure cardio, but you can resistance train to improve your cardio and all those other parameters. What's your stance on that? The weightlifting, the resistance training, the cardio, and kind of your split and its version of effect on VO2.
Maybe one of the most common questions that at least asked of me in like a consult or in Instagram DMs is Is it more important for longevity to lift weights or to do cardio? And I hate to say it, but it kind of depends. And it depends on the unique demands, needs of the individual. But I will also say this with great certainty, you probably should be doing both at certain amounts, at different amounts, different times a year, certain times a year, so that you have very good exposures to a lot of different stressors.
Yep.
So that your body is more adaptable to different things and not so focused on one thing. Because I guarantee you the guy who's got the best VO2 max ever in the history of the world is shitty at something else.
Yep.
Which actually cost him something based on his health.
Yep.
So there's going to be a point of diminishing returns. Now, with this particular test, it might be like, yeah, the top 0.001% actually has diminishing returns.
Yep.
On this idea of longevity or well-being or health. But that also then means that someone who's 35 pounds overweight, who hasn't seen the inside of a gym in 20 years, probably shouldn't be worrying about VO2 max anyway.
Yeah, and I want to go back
Or
also.
the test.
Yeah, and I also want to refer back to that muscle mass statement. Like, over muscle mass might be bad too. So like a VO2, once you get to a critical point, might get to an action potential that it becomes bad. But I think my statement on that is also like, hey, people, if you're not in the world of weightlifting already and you're concerned about putting on too much muscle that it's going to be detrimental to your health, first of all, you're not even on our planet if that thought is in your head, because it's a conscious effort every day of mine, and there's no way to do that. It's hard to maintain even the muscle I have. Like, I don't eat enough carbs and it instantly goes away. I feel weaker. So even just maintenance of the muscle you have without going to the point of over musculature is even difficult. So I think that argument should be completely left out. It's kind of like the salt argument with congestive heart failure. We can talk about that another time. So we're not here really to tell you cardio is bad, like Mike said. And I'm going to reiterate that, right?
And here's the other thing. Someone please define cardio for me.
Yes. Now, all right. Now he knows I have a squirrel brain. I wish he didn't just do that.
Sorry.
And today's VO2 max day, so I'm going to try to get back on topic.
Yeah,
but I think
I'll help you out.
No, but I think we have to talk about that for a good 5 minutes.
I agree.
Because at the end of the day, I don't know how we haven't really talked about that. By the way, this is a purely genuine off-topic conversation because we've never actually defined it for each other. In my mind, my version of cardio is like, how am I going to test my heart to increase its heart rate where I can do kinetic movement, where I have the ability to continue to move in the exact same manner as when I started, independent of where my heart rate gets. So then my movement becomes altered, weakened, or I lose form or whatever at a certain heart rate. That to me is like cardio. Can I maintain that through a larger spectrum of heart rate exposures? That's my version.
Yeah. So I'll zoom out. You know how my mind works. Like I'm always going to try to get as far away and think about it so that we have some, like, we can say yes or no, because we know complex questions usually aren't binary. Like it's yes or no. It's operates on a continuum. Yep. So and because you practice metabolic medicine, what is the worst possible sign that your metabolism isn't working?
Fasting insulin at like 35.
And what's the worst sign of your cardiorespiratory fitness? There is no cardio. You're dead.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
like,
there's none.
So like essentially anything above death is essentially cardio.
Right. Your heart's moving.
Your oxygen exchange. You have 3 energy systems. They all work kind of in conjunction. It's not one and then one switches off to turn on another.
It's continuous.
Right. And that then is dictated by your fitness.
Yep.
When your aerobic system turns anaerobic, when you becomes glycolytic, so on and so forth. So the worst example of cardio is not being able to express cardiovascular fitness.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's how I think about it and on the totally 30,000 foot view.
Yep.
So when we look at it, it's kind of about the ability to do work.
Yeah.
As general as that sounds.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, the ability to resist fatigue.
Yeah.
Because now where it's like, oh yeah, because it's case dependent. The marathon runner has fitness. The football player has fitness. The golfer has fitness. The mom has fitness.
Yeah.
So what do they have to be fit for? Because like you always say, life athletes are a thing.
Well, that's all it's about, man.
What cardiovascular fitness do you need for your life to extend it, whether it be length or quality or whatever else?
Yep.
And that allows us to kind of pinpoint what do we actually have to address for that individual in front of us? No different how you look at a blood panel and be like, out of the 80 here, we got to worry about 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And cardio, even something as chaotic, I always start my experience in a lab review with a discussion of what I believe aging is. And it comes down, in my mind, to vascular health. And it's microvascular circulation. To me, that means everything. So if you have 10% plaque in an artery that's very large, that 90% is still open. If you have 10% plaque in a vessel that's a distant capillary, well, guess what? Nothing's open. So imagine you're not really paying attention to cardiovascular health in terms of plaque deposition and burden relative to that person's biomarkers. And then you're pushing them on a bike to do more VO2. The person with better vessels, better hemoglobin, better hematocrit, less plaque, more circulation in the distal capillaries into the internal organs is going to have a better threshold for VO2 max. So like all of the variability is intensely detailed, but the end result is, do we have a measurement for cardiovascular fitness? We kind of do, a VO2, but then some of the studies are really flawed with it. So I think we just start with, that's the definition of cardio from the two of us. I think that's a reasonable thought. And actually, the cool part is I think they kind of both like work together, because work capacity becomes, how can I sustain exactly what I'm doing at a heart rate that you don't know is at 120 or 180?
And then you could also look at like, why can't I get more fit?
Yes.
Because, obviously the VO2 is really great at the central mechanisms.
Yeah.
But does it identify the capillaries in your foot?
Right.
I don't know. Do we have to worry about it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Which would then depend on future testing.
Yes. And the coolest part about that is if you're following the biometric data like we have, we might have stepping points along that process to say, okay, this is actually affecting your VO2 in a good way or a bad way relative to your muscle mass, your cardiovascular fitness in terms of its anatomic health and the rest.
Because when you get into, the micro vascular issues, and that person is morbidly obese, like, is that part of like how we have to address the vascularity issues?
Of course.
Right.
And then these people that are running around town with a hemoglobin A1C of 5.6 that their primary cares are telling them, don't worry about it, you're not a diabetic yet. Because technically prediabetes starts at 5.7. But if you're in a car going 30 miles an hour at a cliff that has no bridge and you're still just going 30, maybe you're not doing 100 to the bridge, so you might not fly off it and definitely die in a minute. It might take 3 more minutes. And if you can analogize and reason with what I just said, you'll understand what I mean by the
bottom
spectrum.
line, you're still going off the cliff.
You're still going off the fucking cliff. So let's define VO2. All right, so we defined cardio and now it's VO2. So VO2 by definition is the milliliters per kilogram per minute of oxygen that you essentially can handle, right? So at some point in time, you need to interpret how much oxygen you're utilizing as a direct measurement of how metabolically active your body is. That's kind of what this does. The formula is actually based on body weight, specifically kilograms, milliliters per kilogram per minute. So the number isn't just a reflection of your cardiovascular fitness. It's also influenced by how much you weigh.
Right.
The reason we're talking about this, people, is a major milestone in healthcare, I think, that we've achieved here at RTS Health. Weight actually matters. Dependent on body fat, muscle mass, fine. But your overall weight will become a determining factor for your cardiovascular fitness. Let's talk about that a little more.
A lot of that would point, I think, as VO2 being maybe a really good proxy of health, but doesn't tell you why it matters. When you start to dig deep, especially with the idea that most people in this country are trending to obese states, I'm going to assume their VO2 max sucks.
Yep.
So if we could just help them, and this is now where the practical application comes from, this data informs us of maybe the hierarchy for that person with a really poor VO2 who is also way overweight. If we just deal with the weight situation, the VO2 max gets better.
Instantly.
Not just because the numerator and denominator become more favorable, because they have to do different things in their life, meaning maybe eating better food, doing a little bit more activity, strength training. And it gets back to the nuts and bolts of what makes the VO2 maybe significant to test.
Yep. Now, a VO2, for instance, in like a high school thing in arena, a Cooper's test, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it's a 12-minute run, walk type thing. It's meters, distance covered, minus 504.9 over a 44.7, whatever the calculation is. But that's like a one way to kind of determine maybe a high school athlete, right? And then you have bigger and better ways to measure. Some of the bigger and better ways come down to algorithms and calculations of exercise tolerance and maximum heart rates over resting heart rates multiplied by a cofactor of 15.3. That's like one way people do it. There's a whole bunch of ways. But one thing we're trying to say is if you lose body weight, you instantly affect your VO2. But other things we can do in terms of exercise tolerance then become the process. Now, in VO2 world, I'm relatively insignificant. And it's kind of why I would say like the ATIAs of the world that push this VO2 as this huge interventional item for medicine, it does indeed help us, but I believe it's more of a measurement of like, hey, I call you Mike. I've been treating Joey for 3 months. How's the VO2 looking? You say, oh, the VO2 got better. That to me now can confirm what I'm doing medically. Rather than you call me and say, hey, this guy's VO2 got better. What do their labs look like? And I'm like, well, they kind of look the same. The reason that sounds non-scientific is the interpretation of data with subjectivity becomes so intense that normal lab values, which I will expose to the public at some point, I'm going to do a nice lab review for everybody out there so you can experience what real medicine's like. But the variability in terms of that interpretation becomes so profound that me then trying to say as a doctor, oh, their VO2 changed, here's what you should do for their training, I don't think that's the right way to go. I think the right way to go is the physio suite, which we're developing, is VO2 performed. Your training, exercise, nutrition side of it says we want to improve your VO2. The medical supports that by not letting that person macro, micronutrient metabolically get behind. And then really the process is on the training. So if we talk about that, what is the true play? Because I think there's all these longevity gurus out there. And the pattern we're seeing is that they want to make this like a legitimate data point where it's like you just sit on it. So everything I just said comes from the doctor, like your VO2's 33, you got to make it better. When really I should just be saying, hey, your VO2's 33.2, here's your metabolic parameters, here are your biometric data. What I will tell you is you are perfectly sound metabolically, or here are the things metabolically to adjust so that you can then go back and experience that VO2. I don't know if it's going to go up, down, or anywhere in between. It's up to you to go get on the actual training machine and do that. So what do you think in terms of your take on the training and the guru outside of medicine side of VO2 trying to promote it as like a sticking point for yay or nay, you're in or you're out?
I think it's a brilliant marketing strategy. I think it's a way to gatekeep, and I think it's a way to really generate a lot of demand in someone's product. I have no problem with that, except for now you're probably talking to people that are more or less uninformed or miseducated about the whole process of, like, if again, going back to this idea of longevity, does having a better VO2 guarantee you the life you want?
Yep.
Or on the flip side, we've talked about cardio fitness, something like grip test. They say grip test is also a huge predictor. It's like, oh, so you're just telling me someone who's stronger, which probably means they have better muscle mass, has a better chance of living.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So let me ask you this question. If someone has an elite level of VO2 max that you've tested,
yep,
is it also possible that they have cholesterol high enough to kill them soon?
So one of the best VO2s we had is in somebody who was like on the really in bad shape metabolically. So like horrific. So, actually, you know, the VO2 test is truly, there's never a concern for like heart attack or anything like that. But there was like a constant, a conversation about it potentially to be like, hey, if you feel right, and that guy crushed it, and metabolically on paper, horrific.
Yeah. So I guess my point is like, we can have one test And if we believe in it so much that we're going to miss a lot of other things that we should be looking at. So if the goal of having an elite person with a VO2 max to just keep training so it's better and better does not actually affect some of the other things that will end up catching it. It's like the Achilles heel thing.
Yes.
Right? Like we're not even looking at the most obvious problem that person might face in their life. So again, a lot of this is like majoring in the minors so that someone can sell you a product or sell you an idea to get you in their system. Now, if their system actually is way more comprehensive, if you get someone in the door that way and then you're honest about like what a VO2 is or isn't, or a grip test is or isn't, or your blood panel is or isn't, I want to make sure that the person understands the trade-offs and the proper cost analysis of undertaking any type of treatment, any type of training and exercise.
And that's, I think, the biggest statement to take home from this conversation even. It's if we, we're here telling you like, oh, we don't want to just sell you a VO2 to get you locked in the system but we are selling VO2. The whole point we're trying to say is like the VO2 is another measurement of quality control. That's all it is. These are all quality control measures. There's no magic bullet. There's no one thing. It's like, oh, you get to 6 feet and all of a sudden you're the perfect male. No. You get to 200 pounds of muscle, all of a sudden your life is perfect. No. It's like there's so many factors involved in this, and VO2 just needs to become a measurement. Now, it is one of the most predictable measurements to attach to somebody who's healthy. Of course. But there's outliers to everything. I mean, Mario Lemieux played NHL hockey all-star constantly and smoked cigarettes in a chain-smoking manner for an entire life, right? So there are going to be outliers to everything, but I think the VO2 max can definitely be used as a really good indicator. Now, part of this, I think, has to also then be, like I said when we started, I'm not really a VO2 person to you, but then the medical community also needs to be smart with what they use VO2 with as well. So we combine our efforts so that we have both sides covered, right? If I'm a doctor and I'm saying certain things about training, that holds no merit if you don't back that up. And if you're on the training, exercise, nutrition end of things and you say something medical and it's not supported by somebody in your arena, that means nothing. But how many people out there just sell shit completely out of their lane? So you go to a random gym, you get a random VO2 max, and they tell you to go train harder. If they haven't checked your labs, if they haven't checked your blood, if they haven't done any other measurements of fitness on you to make sure that you're not a vasculopath or you're not like one of the guys that came to me, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, I said, you have some cardiovascular risk factors, and ended up walking into a cardiologist's office the next day and getting a stent. So if you don't know that data and you're going to push them to get to a result, that could potentially harm somebody. What about the studies? Now, we've talked about studies in medicine, studies in training, studies in nutrition. There's studies in everything. And when you look at a study, part of the problem is, number one, you got to look at who funded it, because it's always funded by somebody who has personal interest. You got to look at the authors and their association to the funding partners and what association they have to any bigger vision behind the funding, because that's all it comes down to. The results are pretty good. The abstract's pretty good, but where the meat and potatoes is in the body of the paper, right? What about the paper that came out on the VO2 max stuff? I mean, if you actually get into it, as you said, I don't even think it's relevant to VO2 max fully.
A lot of these things are done, or the way that they're presented are causal in expression, right? Like they say that if you have a good VO2, it's guaranteeing you longevity. If you have a strong grip strength test, you're guaranteed. And that is how they're interpreting the data and then presenting it to the general public that probably have never really read a literature like scientific research. And that is fraudulent in my opinion, because at best these things are correlationally based, not causal, which means something happens or you do something happens. Yep. In correlational relationships, it looks like it tends to influence this outcome. Right. And this is where I think everyone's embarrassed about this statement, but sometimes things are good enough. Yeah. Like that study that everyone talks about, the biggest change in all-cause mortality happened not at the top level, but the worst to the second worst. Yeah. That to me is good enough.
Yeah. That's
huge. We don't
huge.
have to chase all these things, especially if you're looking at all the other things, whether it be habit-based, lab-based, the RMO, all those other things. It's like, do we want to put against 30 hours of time each week to get a VO2 max better when we just got to get you out of the bottom?
Yeah.
And then clean up your diet.
But
and
that's kind of our big thing in like Western culture for some reason. I don't really get it. We take a spectrum of things and it's 0% to 100%. If you have the majority in that upper category of whatever, vascular fitness, cardiovascular fitness, whatever it is, and you have a minority down here, the minority is completely throwing this off. So the goal, like you said, is just to get this minority of really sedentary people just to keep moving, right? We just want you to go from that 0.2 percentile up.
Yeah, right.
And those changes are pretty easy to ensue.
Big time.
And guess what? If you lose a couple kilograms and nothing else happens, you've instantly become healthier relative to your VO2. We can prove it by the calculation. That bottom 2%, what really does that mean? And I gotta say this out loud because there are people on this planet that walk into my office and say, I don't do much, but I do walk. That is intensely irritating to my emotional well-being. I don't know how to interact with that person that's proud of just walking, right? Like, I don't know what else to tell you. Walking ain't enough. A little bit is good. A little more is better. Walking is like the bare minimum you have to walk to survive. We should never be using steps as a measurement of exercise. Steps are by default. If you're human, you should get up and move. Something. Wake up out of bed, walk down, get yourself a coffee, go outside, do laps around the yard. I don't know. At baseline walking, we should never have to discuss with somebody to get more steps. I don't know what else to say.
But I think that's why it's so important to talk about steps because, again, a lot of the research, and there's tons of research about steps and what's the best.
Yeah.
The only conclusive data on step counts is that if you're under 2,500 steps per day, bad things happen.
Yeah, which
that's
is
the
nuts.
only and that's about 25 minutes of non-exercise activity.
That's honestly like saying
crazy.
That's like saying if you're breathing, you're alive.
Again,
Thank you.
like we can apply the good enough mantra to steps. If you're not getting at least 2,500 steps a day, your life is going to be really negatively impacted by the lack of activity. So let's get it up to 4.
Yes.
And oh my God, that's a 40% increase. That's fantastic. And that's good enough maybe.
Yep. And I love this part of the conversation for one major reason. I think most people out there think that we are only wanting to work with these like high profile elite. Let me tell you what my favorite instance is. I love the 60-plus-year-old woman who walks in my office, sits down and just has been grinding and you can feel it. And you're like, how do you feel? And she's like, fine. And you're like, oh, how's your day? And she's like, I get up and I get it done. And that's the vibration. That human, when they say to me, I can't get up and move, that's the person we want to embrace. We are not looking to change 99 percentile performers into that 100th percentile. We're looking to change the bottom to get the whole average up. And we want to embrace those people because if you are only getting 2,500 steps, if you are only at capacity to stand up off your couch to go eat, we got to get you healthier.
Yeah.
It should not be intimidating. We're not here to like scare you into health. I'm actually really nervous. Probably it comes across as aggression for the population. Because I don't want my kids in 20 years being around a bunch of sick people. It gets really depressing. Clinically, I believe that's where that conversation should live. We are not purely challenging high performers. We really want to get into the entire population. Genetics research, right? Now, there's always these things. I mean, you have probably gotten it since you were born, like, oh, Mike's just genetically different. He just has muscles in places we don't have it. Well, Mike's been working out forever, and those muscles have been maintained for a reason because he counts his calories every day. He's fucking...
Check my fitness pal.
Correct. So if we want to argue the 10, genetics...
12 years at this point.
Yeah, and we'll call it epigenetics at this point. So the expression of your genetics you have made profoundly obvious to the rest of us.
Can you actually just quickly hit on the difference between, like, let's say genotype and phenotype and what expression really means?
So here's what I would tell.
A lot of people
don't understand.
They don't understand it, but it's an easy scapegoat, because when you don't understand something, you're like, well, I don't know what it is, so it's got to be this unknown thing, and I'll just lump it into my genetics suck.
Yeah, so I'll make it this easy. There are genetic codes for certain things. The gene that's coded for sometimes doesn't always show its face. So one of us might be walking around right now with some genetic marker. I do not believe it's always a single one. I believe it's the entire thing and somehow how it all works together. But one of us may have a genetic marker for a disease, but it may never turn on because we may never have the environmental trigger. We may never have the deletion or disruption in the reading of our DNA by our mRNA and by our RNA and all these other things. We may not make the right proteins that then interact with the nucleus, and a whole bunch of science that none of you have to know except for a couple things. The genes you carry do not always express themselves. The expression of that then is phenotype. So the phenotype comes out as something you can see. Oh, you have the heart disease of that gene. Oh, your skin changed color because of that gene. Oh, you developed balding because of that gene. Whatever that gene might be got turned on, and now you see it. It's a spectrum of on and off, and I think it's related to a ton of different genetic interventions. So in order to tell somebody, oh, that's just genetic, is a very difficult thing. Now, epigenetics, this is like the new version of genotype, phenotype, and then now it's like, here's the reality of it. You can have genes to be overweight. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe there are, because there are families of overweight people. But if you do not walk to the refrigerator and eat more calories than your body needs, you will not be overweight. Me and you might have a gene for lung cancer, and we probably do. I don't know. I have the normal human genes, and when you smoke enough, you might get lung cancer. So yeah, we probably have it. But if I don't smoke a lot to get lung cancer, I might not get lung cancer, right? So the expression of that gene becomes something different when you actually incite it to show its face. And that's epigenetics. The reason I believe in the modern era it's a big, big, big deal is there's a lot of metabolic diseases like diabetes that people blame on genetics. Yes, type 1 diabetes, no problem. We'll give it to you. But that's about 5% of the population. Type 2 diabetics, and then the type 1s that were type 2s that became type 1s, that's all dietary and lifestyle. So then when people sit and say, well, it's genetics, and I hear them come in after a meeting with an endocrinologist, a hospital-trained doctor, I don't associate with them too much, but they'll come in and say, oh, my doc told me it's genetic, my hemoglobin A1C. And it's like, well, you're 200 pounds, you're 5'8", and you're 42% body fat. Do you really think it's genetics? Like, at some point, we got to be honest with ourselves. I think the VO2 max with those genetics can also give us a pretty good measurement at baseline, because like we talked about before, the overweight guy who had cholesterol and metabolic syndrome that looked like he was going to die got on a VO2 and made it look easy, right? So there's always going to be these outliers. But I do believe in terms of a VO2 max, a measurement interpretable by any sort of genetic variant, could be made on a long, big spectrum of interpretation of data. But I think when it really comes down to it, it's really all nurture, and nature plays a small role. I want to make one more statement on that, if you guys don't mind. Nature, nurture, we got about 5 minutes. Nature, nurture to me is a big, big topic. And this may parlay into a deeper podcast. And everybody out there, really listen to what I'm about to say, because I think it's important. When the mother is about to have a baby, her entire life, right, is nurture. And why am I saying that? Well, every decision any female makes from the day they're born till the day they conceive to the day they have a baby affects the outcome of that baby, independent of that baby's genetics. So nature versus nurture is fine. The nature of it started with the birth of that mother, her initial genetics. The nurture of those genetics has been happening that entire time. So the external environment when a baby is born is not just the start of nurture. The start of nurture, I believe, is in the womb, in the pre-pregnancy, in the lead up, nutritional, macronutrient, exercise, all of these other things, VO2 testing on a mother that's about to go have a baby. And we've said it a bunch of times. Being pregnant for a single day is like running a marathon metabolically. So imagine you don't train, you do nothing, you're not prepared, and all of a sudden you're running a marathon every day metabolically. On the back end of pregnancies, do you think postpartum depression is purely based on postpartum, or do we want to investigate maybe prepartum preparation for humans with depression postpartum? I know that sounds complicated. It is a fact. Any thoughts on that? Because you probably experience it the same in training world. Oh, genetically, I can't do this one or two things.
When you were talking, it reminded me, and I'll probably butcher the quote, but genes load the gun, habits pull the trigger.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It also reminds me of that meme where the doctor's talking to a patient and the patient saying who's overweight goes, well, obesity runs in my family. And the doctor says, the problem is no one runs in your family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good.
So let me ask you this one.
Write that down.
Is it possible that, let's say, a family of highly active, affluent, intelligent, lean, normal body weight can produce children that look relatively the same, that also participate in high school sports, go on to college, go on to med school, play college lacrosse, and then based on time, habits, behaviors, they deviate from what their gene pool kind of looks like.
Exposure to outside environment.
Correct. So but this is where genes always are talked about, and more times than not, when something's wrong, they blame their genes. No one says, well, I'm a genius because everyone's a genius in my family. That's my genes.
Genes and health always get a negative connotation.
Always.
But there's no way that a murderer on a stand, you could be like, that's genetic. Imagine that statement. That'd be fucking intense.
But it also is like, I mean, if genes played that big of a role, I'd be out of business.
Yeah. And they would have altered them.
You know what I mean? Like we would never have been able to get someone to lose 30 pounds.
Ever.
If genes was that big of a thing. I'm not saying, I don't know how much, but I don't know if I can control for that. So what I do know is if we do something that is more process oriented, outcome based, and iterate as your body changes, as your mindset changes, because some of genes is just a belief that doesn't serve you.
Exactly.
Right? So if you believe that you're crippled because of your genetic code, I don't know if I can help you.
Yes, and I want to asterisk this entire conversation as well. Neither of us are trying to deny that there are real genetic mess ups out there. There's trisomies, there's Klinefelter, there's plenty of genetic defects in the planet that I am 100% appreciative of, and I mean that. I mean, I experienced one right in my face, genetics, whatever. I know there are things. I am saying the average human on the planet that just blames genetics for obesity has to get out of their own way. At some point, we got to change that statement. Marcus, how you doing, man? Good. How much? We're out of time, right? So I think
that was good.
I think our new push. We got a really awesome social media help with a girl, Heather Morotech. She's amazing. She helps publish all of these. She helps edit them. We got Marcus Carry On, who carries on as he carries on. He's the man. Good. He helps us video. He's always behind the scenes. And I do want to say thank you to all those people, right? This is not done by just Mike and myself. We have an entire staff behind us. If you come see us as a client, it's not just us. We have a team of people that helps take care of you. We have a team of people that tries to get this information out to the public. We don't really take this lightly. I don't know how to say it in any other manner. When I talk about health, I'm not just fucking around and trying to blow smoke up people's ass by getting emotional about it. It actually really bothers me. I spend a lot of time thinking about these things, and I want you guys to know that. And I want you to know that Mike essentially does the same thing with the training, nutrition, and medicine. We talk about it all constantly. We're here for you.
People would be amazed how much.
They wouldn't want to hang out with us because that's pretty much all we talk about. If you need us, you can always reach out, RTS Health at rtsct.com. You can go on our website, Instagram, DM us. Let's get everybody healthy. Adios until the next episode.
Have a great weekend. See you next week.